Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Monday, December 12th, 2022. Today I'm going to recap yesterday's NFL Week 14 games and look ahead to tonight's Monday night game between the Patriots and the Cardinals. We have college football to recap from the weekend. Same with World Cup, college basketball, NBA, NHL. I'm going to do a new segment today called College Basketball Shouts, where I'm going to discuss some college basketball teams that some of them are notable and some of them are kind of under the radar that are off to decent starts. News and notes and best bet. All right, we'll start with the NFL. We will go over the Week 14 games from yesterday and look ahead to tonight's game. Bills over the Jets 20-12. Bills 10-3. Jets 7-6. Bengals over the Browns 23-10. Bengals 9-4, Browns 5-8. Cowboys over the Texans 27-23. Cowboys 10-3. Houston 11-1. Lions over the Vikings 34-23. Lions 6-7. Minnesota 10-3. Jaguars over the Titans 36-22. Jaguars 5-8. Tennessee 7-6. Eagles over the Giants 48-22. Eagles 12-1. Giants 7-5-1. Ravens over the Steelers 16-14. Ravens 9-4. Pittsburgh 5-8. Chiefs over the Broncos 34-28. Chiefs 10-3. Denver 3-10. 49ers over the Bucks 35-7. San Fran 9-4. Tampa 6-7. Panthers over the Seahawks 30-24. Panthers 5-8. Seattle 7-6. And the Chargers over the Dolphins 23-17. The Chargers 7-6. Miami 8-5. All right, and now 8:15 tonight between the Patriots and the Cardinals. This game line is Arizona as a 1.5 point underdog. Total is 43.5. I project 3.5 and 44 in a fifth. I'm going to lay 1.5 at New England. I think that they're better than Arizona. They're more talented than Arizona. For the most part, they have a better coach than Arizona, obviously. And Cliff Kingsbury, I don't know. I just think he's somebody that is going to get fired at the end of the season. And I don't think Bill wants to lose these games. So I'm going to lay the 1.5 with the Pats against Arizona. All right, now move on to college football. We will recap the games we had over the weekend. The big one, that's tradition year after year. We have to go over it. Navy, Army. Army beats Navy 2017 in double overtime. Don't remember the last time Army-Navy went to overtime. Army 6-6. They're not in a bowl game for some reason. And Navy's 4-8. But say a team has to drop out of a bowl because of COVID or whatever, then Army would replace them. I mean, Army should be in that bowl game instead of Rice. 5-7 Rice is in a bowl game and not Army. But that's because Army was 5-6 at the time. And I think one of Army's wins came against an FCS opponent, which makes sense. Navy disappointing year. And by the way, Navy and their coach parted ways. Ken Niumatalolo, who has been their coach forever, as they got rid of him, which is crazy. And he was there a long time. If we have time, we'll get more into that in news and notes. The FCS quarterfinals. North Dakota State over Sanford 27-9. North Dakota State 11-2. Sanford 11-2. Montana State over William & Mary 55-7. Montana State 12-1. William & Mary finishes 11-2. Incarnate Word upsets Sacramento State 66-63. Incarnate Word 12-1. Sacramento State finishes 12-1. That was their only loss of the year. Disappointing for that school. And South Dakota State over Holy Cross 42-21. South Dakota State 12-1. Holy Cross finishes at 12-1. This game was tied going into the fourth quarter, but South Dakota State just pulled away. So that score was closer than it indicated. And then the semifinals are Friday night and Saturday for the FCS. It's Incarnate Word at North Dakota State and then Montana at South Dakota State. And then the Celebration Bowl will be Saturday afternoon. All right, the World Cup. We'll go over the results from the quarters. All right, so Croatia over Brazil, 1-1 in penalties, but it was 4-2 on penalties. So this was a great game. In extra time, Neymar in the 106th minute gives Brazil a 1-0 lead, and then Bruno Petkovic in the 117th minute ties it at 1. And then the kicks. Rodrigo misses. Nikola Vlasic makes. Casemiro makes. Lovro Majer makes. Pedro makes. Luka Modric makes. Marquinhos misses. And then Mislav Orsic makes as Croatia moves on to the semifinal. Another kicks game. Netherlands-Argentina. So it was 2-2 draw. Argentina advances 4-3 on penalties. This was a crazy game too. So Argentina takes a 1-0 lead on a goal by Nahuel Molina in the 35th minute. Then Lionel Messi penalty kick in the 73rd minute puts Argentina up 2-0. You think they're cruising? Not so fast. 83rd minute, Wout Weghorst from the Dutch puts the Dutch on the board. And then in extra time, in the 101st minute, Weghorst ties the game for the Dutch. And then Denzel Dumfries gets a red card in the 120th minute. And then come the kicks. Virgil van Dijk miss for the Dutch. Messi makes for Argentina. Steven Berghuis misses for the Dutch. Leandro Paredes makes for Argentina. Teun Koopmeiners makes for Dutch. Gonzalo Montiel makes for Argentina. Weghorst makes for the Dutch. Enzo Fernandez misses for Argentina. That opens up the door for the Dutch to tie the shootout at 3 apiece on a kick by Luke de Jong. And then Lautaro Martinez wins it for Argentina in kicks as they advance to the semis. Saturday, Morocco over Portugal, 1-0. Morocco is just on an incredible ride. Youssef and Nezeri scores in the 42nd minute. They give Morocco the 1-0 lead, and Morocco hangs on. Walid Chadira, 93rd minute, red card. So he was tossed from the game. And then France over England, 2-1. All right, so France, Yorlayan to Chalmany in the 17th minute gives France a 1-0 lead. Then Harry Kane on a penalty kick ties it for England at 1-1 in the 54th minute. Then Olivier Giroud in the 78th minute, Olivier Giroud, gives France the 2-1 lead. So your semis. So tomorrow is going to be Argentina, Croatia. And Wednesday is going to be France, Morocco. I'll give out the picks on the podcast for the games on their respective days. All right, now I'll move on to college basketball. We'll go over all the weekend's results and look ahead to a smaller window for tonight. We'll start with Friday. Bryant over Stony Brook, 79-60. Merrimack over New England, 82-23. Wow. Fordham over Binghamton, 77-62. Fairleigh Dickinson over Columbus, 76-73 in overtime. Central Connecticut over Dartmouth, 59-50. Queens over High Point, 87-79. Grambling over Vandy, 64-62. McNeese over Northern Iowa, 52-49. Alabama A&M over Lipscomb, 63-59. Number 18 Gonzaga over Washington 77-60. Utah Tech over Chapman 99-58, and Air Force over Arkansas State 80-55. All right, the big slate from Saturday. Tulane over Buffalo 88-63. Penn State over number 17 Illinois 74-59. Chattanooga over Johnson Tennessee 97-47. Vermont over Colgate 73-72. Drexel over LaSalle 75-68. Or 65-58 in overtime. Number 5 UConn over LIU 114-61. Number 2 Texas beats Arkansas Pine Bluff 88-43. Number 9 Arkansas beats Oklahoma 88-78. Number 16 Kentucky beats Yale 69-59. Quinnipiac beats Lafayette 76-63. Florida State beats Louisville 75-53. St. Joe's beats St. Peter's 73-57. Penn beats Temple 77-57. VMI beats Radford 77-74. Syracuse beats Georgetown 83-64. Stetson beats Webber International 83-59. Toledo beats Canisius 69-68. North Florida beats Bethune 88-48. Ball State beats Evansville 88-69. Northeastern beats Holy Cross 59-58. Coastal Carolina beats Regent 102-39. Miami beats NC State 80-73. UC Irvine beats South Dakota 83-71. Richmond over Drake 82-52. Rhode Island over Army 77-67. Charlotte beats Detroit 82-80 in overtime. Dayton beats Asheville 79-56. LSU beats Wake 72-70. Number 4 Purdue beats Nebraska 65-62 in overtime. UIC beats Western Michigan 62-56. Providence beats Albany 93-55. Number 8 Alabama beats number 1 Houston 71-65. Number 19 UCLA beats Denver 87-64. St. Mary's beats number 22 San Diego State 68-61. Abilene Christian beats A&M Commerce 83-64. Western Illinois beats Eastern Illinois 79-75. Tulsa beats Central Michigan 70-63. Georgia Southern beats Wofford 79-57. Southern Miss beats Lamar 95-59. Kent State beats Cleveland State 67-58. SC Upstate beats SC State 89-84 in overtime. Xavier beats Cincinnati 80-77. Ole Miss beats Valpo 98-61. UNC beats Georgia Tech 75-59. Georgia Court beats Delaware State 75-69. Holy crap. That's a bad loss for Delaware State. Pate beats Sacred Heart 91-66. Illinois State beats SIU Edwardsville 77-71. UNC Wilmington over Jacksonville 81-53. Wichita State over Longwood 81-63. Western Carolina beats Brevard 99-55. Utah Valley beats Northern Arizona 80-75 in overtime. American beats George Washington 69-64. New Mexico beats UTSA 94-76. Norfolk State beats William & Mary 67-53. Bellarmine beats Murray State 69-58. Furman beats Winthrop 82-67. Northwestern State beats UL Monroe 91-73. Seattle beats North Dakota 80-78 in overtime. Michigan State beats Brown 68-50. UNLV beats Washington State 74-70. San Jose State beats Santa Clara 75-64. Southern beats LSU Alexandria 98-76. UMass Lowell beats St. Fran Brooklyn 68-59. Pacific beats Fresno 76-72. Middle Tennessee beats Belmont 85-75 in overtime. South Dakota State beats Eastern Washington 77-76. Butler beats Cal 82-58. Villanova beats BC 77-56. Memphis beats number 11 Auburn 82-73. Number 6 Kansas beats Missouri 95-67. Number 15 Duke beats Maryland Eastern 82-55. UMBC beats Morgan State 75-63. North Texas beats Grand Canyon 60-58. Troy beats Tennessee Tech 87-74. Or 64. Montana State beats Omaha 82-54. St. John's beats New Hampshire 64-51. West Virginia beats UAB 81-70. Sac State beats Long Beach State 76-74. DePaul beats UTEP 91-70. Eastern Kentucky beats Boise 140-79. BU beats Marist 72-70. Marshall beats Robert Morris 69-60. Western Kentucky beats Wright State 64-60. James Madison beats Gallaudet 106-43. Southern Utah beats Fullerton 67-60. Mount St. Mary's beats Loyola, Maryland 51-34. Oregon beats Nevada 78-65. Gulf Coast beats Mercer 67-62. Princeton beats Monmouth 91-54. Number 10 Arizona beats number 14 Indiana 89-75. Texas State beats Texas Arlington 71-65. Loyola Chicago beats Clemson 76-58. Purdue Fort Wayne beats Missouri State 65-61. Louisiana beats Stanford 75-58. Southern Illinois beats Alcorn State 74-68. Green Bay beats Kansas City 70-64. Montana beats North Dakota State 82-75. St. Thomas, Minnesota beats Idaho State 76-70. Old Dominion beats Gardner-Webb 44-43. Texas Rio Grande beats Eastern Christian 95-82. Santa Barbara beats Pepperdine 67-64 in overtime. Boise beats St. Louis 57-52. Oral beats Central Arkansas 111-78. Portland beats New Orleans 161. Wyoming beats La Tech 92-65. Weber State beats St. Martin's 82-58. BYU beats number 21 Creighton 83-80. Number 24 TCU beats SMU 83-75. Northern Colorado beats Cal State Northridge 70-63. Cal Poly beats Portland State 72-49. Cal Baptist beats San Diego 76-73. And Utah State beats Loyola Marymount 79-67. Sunday, Iona beats St. Bonaventure 72-57. UCF beats Tarleton 75-49. Miami of Ohio beats Calumet College 85-49. Niagara beats Eastern Michigan 67-60. Maine beats Merrimack 50-47. Fordham beats Central Con 90-77. Bryant beats Manhattan 104-97 in overtime. CFB Austin beats Paul Quinn 103-40. Akron beats Jackson State 85-72. Ohio beats Youngstown State 81-79. Alon beats Johnson Wales North Carolina 101-69. Delaware beats Siena 75-64. Charleston beats North Greenville 97-67. East Carolina beats Coppin State 84-75. Fairleigh Dickinson beats NJIT 73-71. Morehead State beats East Tennessee State 61-57. Northwestern beats Prairie View 61-51. Fog Tech beats Oklahoma State 70-65. Nichols over Rust 85-65. Milwaukee beats North Park 92-63. Tennessee Martin beats Chicago State 75-71 in overtime. Kansas State beats Incarnate 98-50. Tennessee State beats Lipcon 90-85. Texas Southern beats North American 95-47. Southern Indiana beats Indiana State 88-85 in overtime. New Mexico beats Duquesne 73-70. Bowling Green beats Hampton 86-72. Navy beats Towson 71-69 in overtime. Colorado State beats Peru State 115-72. Marquette beats Notre Dame 79-64. Number 7 Tennessee beats number 13 Maryland 56-53. UC Riverside beats Idaho 76-74. Number 20 Iowa State beats McNeese 77-40. North Dakota State beats Waldorf 99-54. A&M beats Oregon State 72-54. South Carolina beats Presbyterian 68-57. Wisconsin beats Iowa 78-75 in overtime. Seton Hall beats Rutgers 45-43. VCU beats Howard 70-60. CS East Bay upsets Pacific 79-73. Oof. UMass beats Hofstra 71-56. Number 23 Mississippi State beats Minnesota 69-51. And Hawaii beats St. Fran PA 90-66. All right, not many games tonight. 11 o'clock a.m. Spalding at IUPUI. And then we got at 6:30 Sacred Heart Stony Brook. My line is Stony Brook by 2, total 139 and 13/20. And it is Sacred Heart 1.5, total 141.5. I'm going to take Stony Brook plus the 1.5 and plus 104 to win. 7 o'clock, South Alabama and Alabama A&M. My line is South Alabama by 8 1/4. Total 145 and 4/5. And it's 10.5 and 141.5. I'm going to take the over. Columbia Lafayette. My line is Columbia by 2, total 134 and 1/20. And it's Lafayette by 8.5, total 131.5. Holy crap. Give me Columbia plus 8.5 and plus 290 to win. That's crazy. St. John's, Maine, and New Hampshire we can skip. Yale Fairfield. My line is Fairfield 1 3/4, total 128 and 3/5. And it's Yale by 5.5, total 125.5. Give me Fairfield plus the 5.5 and plus 190 to win. Philander Smith and Little Rock we can skip. And that's at 7:30. And 8 o'clock we have Rice and number 2 Texas. I don't know why I put 7 on the list here. My line is Texas by 14 3/4, total 145 and 4/5, and it is 27.5 and 143.5. Give me Rice getting the points, staying around. Lindsey Wilson, Austin P, and Louisiana Christian Louisiana we can skip. South Florida and Northern Iowa. My line's Northern Iowa by 3.5, total 133 and 7/10, and it's 3.5 and 127.5 over. Liberty and Oral Roberts. My line is Liberty by 2 3/4, total 144 and 7/20. And it's 3.5 and 148.5 in favor of Oral Roberts. Give me Liberty plus 3.5 and plus 146 outright. That's 3 dogs I like doing straight up today. Monmouth, Syracuse. On the ACC network, my line is Syracuse by 23.25, total 143. And a quarter. Or I'm sorry, and the 20th. And it is 21.5 and 140.5. So 21.5 and 140.5. I'm gonna go with the over. Nine o'clock, number 18, Gonzaga hosts Northern Illinois. My line is Gonzaga by 26.5, total 145 and 3/10. It's 29.5 and 151.5 under. Fox Sports 1 from Vegas at the Michelob Ultra Arena. Arizona State and number 21, Creighton. My line, Zona State by 3, total 139 and 7/10. And it's Creighton by 3.5, total 140.5. Give me Bobby freaking Hurley. Arizona State plus 3.5 and plus 132 to win outright. North Central North Dakota and Mount Mary and South Dakota State. We can skip those. 10 o'clock, we have Kennesaw State and number 22, San Diego State. My line is San Diego State by 16.25, total 141 and 19.20. It's at 16.5 and 137.5. Over. And last but not least, or no, that's a lie. We have UC San Diego. My line, San Diego 19, total 145 and 2 fits. And it's 6.5 and 141.5. I'm going to lay the 6.5 with San Diego. And 11:30 tonight from Michelob Ultra Arena, we have New Mexico and San Francisco. My line is San Francisco by 1, total 146 and 3 fits. And it is New Mexico by 3.5, total 155.5. I'm taking the under. Under. I know I have an edge on yet another underdog, but this is an underplay. Because that's where the edge lies. All right, now move on to the NBA. We will recap the games from the weekend and look ahead to tonight's slate. Friday, Knicks over the Hornets 121 to 102. Pacers over the Wizards 121 to 111. Magic over the Raptors 113-109. Nets over the Hawks 120 to 116. Kings over the Cavs 106-95. Sixers over the Lakers 133-122 in overtime. Grizzlies over the Pistons 114-103. Pels over the Suns 128-117. Wolves over the Jazz 118-108. And the Bucks over the Mavs 106-105. Saturday, Spurs over the Heat 115-111. Nets over the Pacers 136-133. Eclipse over the Wiz 114-107. Cavs over the Thunder 110-102. Bulls over the Mavs 144-115. Warriors over the Celtics 123-107. On Saturday primetime, Nuggets over the Jazz 115-110. And the Blazers over the Timberwolves 124-118. Sunday, Pelicans over the Suns 129-124 in overtime. Lakers over the Pistons 124-117. Knicks over the Kings 112-99. Magic over the Raptors 111-99. Sixers over the Hornets 131-113. Hawks over the Bulls 123-122 in overtime. And the Rockets over the Bucks 97-92. Yikes. Not a good loss for Milwaukee. All right, 7 games tonight. 7 o'clock, you have the Heat and the Pacers from Indy. My line is Heat by 1 3/4, total 225 3/4. And it is Heat by 3, total 228. Didn't expect to see the Heat favored. I thought I was getting them as a dog, but no. That means I'm on the right side. So the play here is the under, which is safer. Nets Wiz. Nets are favored by 5.5, totals 27. I have 3 3/4 and 223 and 4 fits, 2 picks, 2 unders. NBA TV at 8 o'clock, Hawks, Grizzlies. So Trae Young against John Morant. My line is Grizzlies by 3 3/4, total 227 and 3/10, and it's 6.5 and 227.5. I'm going to take the Hawks getting the 6.5. No Desmond Bain tonight. 8:30 Thunder Mavs. My line's Mavs by 10, total 227 and 920, and it's 8.5 and 229.5. Under. Cavs Spurs. My line is Cavs by 13 1/4, total 223 and 20, and it's 7 and 218. I'm gonna lay the 7 with the Cavs. Although Cavs and the over is a fun same game parlay. 10 o'clock, you have the Timberwolves and the Trailblazers. My line is Blazers by 4, total 230. That's 4.5 and 227 and 320. It's under. And last but not least, 10:30 NBA TV, the Celtics and the Clippers from Crypto.com Arena. My line is Celtics by 2 1/4, total 224 and 4 fits. It's 3.5 and 225.5. So slight lean to the Clippers. If I had a pick of a dog who wins outright, who is it? Probably Indiana or the Clippers. Clippers are minus 140. Indiana is plus 128. And a good long shot one would be the Hawks. If I want to get frisky at plus 220. All right, NHL. We'll go over the games from the weekend and look ahead to tonight's slate. So Friday night was actually busy in hockey. Pens over the Sabres 4-3 in OT on a game winner by Jeff Carter. Jackets over the Flames 3-1. Isles over the Devils 6-4. Caps over the Kraken 4-1. Jets over Blackhawks 3-1. Rangers over the Avs 2-1. A shootout. Oilers over the Wild 5-2. Coyotes over the Bruins 4-3. Sharks over the Ducks 6-1. And the Golden Knights over the Flyers 2-1 in OT on a game winner by Jonathan Marchessault. Saturday, Sens over the Preds 3-2. Stars over the Red Wings 3-2 in OT on a game winner by Niels Lundqvist. Lightning over the Panthers 4-1. Kings over the Canadiens 4-2. Pens over the Sabres 3-1. Leafs over the Flames 5-4 in OT on a game winner by Mitch Marner. Canes over the Isles 3-0. And Wild over the Canucks 3-0. Yesterday, Avs over the Blues 3-2 in OT on a game winner by Mikko Rantanen. Jackets over the Kings 5-6 in overtime on a game winner by Johnny Gaudreau. Kraken over the Panthers 5-2. Coyotes over the Flyers 4-5. Or 5-4 in OT on a game winner by Clayton Keller. Caps over the Jets 5-2. And the Bruins over the Golden Knights 3-1. So they win the revenge game. All right, 6 games tonight. 7 o'clock, you have the Flames at the Canadiens from Montreal. Calgary's minus 220. Canadiens are plus 180 over under 6, minus 180. Flames minus 1.5 is plus 118. Canadiens plus 1.5 is minus 144. My favorite play, first period result, Calgary Flames plus 128. My favorite play for a big favorite, I should say. NHL Network, Devils, Rangers from the Garden. Devils minus 111, Rangers minus 108, over under 6, overs minus 106, unders minus 114, Devils minus 1.5 is plus 210, Rangers plus 1.5 is minus 265. These two teams met 2 weeks ago at the Garden, maybe 3 weeks ago. And the Devils won 5-3. The Rangers have played a little better since then. The Devils are coming off a loss to the Islanders. This is a tough call. But my gut tells me that this game goes to overtime. So I'm going to go tie, plus 320. Stars, Penguins. Penguins minus 128, Stars plus 106, over under 6.5, overs minus 104, unders minus 118. Stars plus 1.5 is minus 230, Pens minus 1.5 is plus 184. Penguins are playing better. 16-8-4 on the year. Favorite at home over the Stars. Rightfully so at this point. I think they win in regulation, plus 124. Ducks, Senators at 7:30. Senators minus 225. Ducks plus 184 over under 6.5 minus 10 each way. Ducks plus 1.5 is minus 40. Sens minus 1.5 is plus 114. The Senators are really bad. So are the Ducks. I'm still going with the over. 8 o'clock, Oilers Wild. Wild minus 126. Oilers plus 105 over under 6.5. Overs minus 122. Unders even money. Wild minus 1.5 is plus 186. Oilers plus 1.5 is minus 235. I'm going with Edmonton plus 105 as a road dog. And Preds Blues from St. Louis. This is a pick. A minus 110 each way. Over under 6.5 minus 110 each way. Preds minus 1.5 is plus 210. Blues plus 1.5 is minus 265. I'm going to go with the St. Louis Blues to win at home at minus 110. All right, now I'm going to do my new segment. I'm going to do college basketball shouts, where I go through some of the conferences, potentially every conference. I'm going to shout a team. And we're going to do teams that are off to good starts. So, we're going to go in alphabetical order by conference. And we'll start at the Atlantic 10. Shouts to Fordham. The Fordham Rams, 11-1 on the season. Soft schedule. Yeah. Their lone loss came on November 11th at then number 10 Arkansas. And Arkansas is a contender in the SEC, potentially a national title contender too. So no shame in losing that game. And they have 2 games left in the entire month of December, hosting VMI and the Open Conference play, hosting Davidson. So let's see if this is a sneaky contender for an at-large. Their best non-con win at Tulane. So they do have a win over an AAC school, which is really good. So we have to see how they do in A10 play. So if you asked me the losses number for their at-large hopes, honestly, if they finish the season with more than 5 losses going into the A10 tournament, I don't think they're an at-large. But we'll see. 11-1's a good start. They deserve shouts. Shouts to UMass, 8-2 on the year. Frank Martin at the helm now. Their 2 losses, UMass Lowell, who's awesome in the AEC, and Towson, who was the favorite in the Colonial before the season. Key non-con wins, Myrtle Beach against Colorado is a key non-con win that they have. And Hofstra is a pre-annual team in the Colonial, so got to give that one a shout. So they close out non-con play Saturday against North Texas. At the Basketball Hall of Fame Classic in Massachusetts against North Texas. And then on the 20th against Dartmouth at home. And then the Open Conference play on New Year's Eve at St. Bonaventure. So I think the same rule applies here for Fordham. I know that UMass Lowell loss stings. It stings. So, what's a better win, Colorado or Tulane at this point? I would say Colorado because of the Pac-12, but you never know. 2 more shouts in this conference. Davidson 7-3, Duquesne 7-3. Davidson's 3 losses at Delaware, perennial team in the Colonial. Against Charleston in the Charleston Classic. Charleston's a good CAA team this year, and then home Charlotte on that crazy buzzer beater. So you can make a case this team should be 8-2. They have a tough one Saturday at Purdue in the Indy Classic. And then Wednesday the 21st, they host Northeastern. And then they open conference play the 28th at Fordham. And then they host Davidson. Or Dayton. And then Duquesne, 3 losses. came at Kentucky, acceptable. They lose a bye game to New Mexico State, which doesn't look good right now. And then they lost to Marshall, who's a good Conference USA team. So they have a tough one at home against DePaul, and I put tough in parentheses. And then Saturday hosting Indiana State, the 21st hosting Winthrop. They open conference on the 28th at Dayton, and then on New Year's Eve they host Rhode Island. All right, now we're going to do shouts in the Atlantic Sun. So there's a lot of them that are off to good starts, but there's two that I'm going to shout. Queens, who's new to Division I, they're 8-2. Welcome to D1, Queens. I know they have wins against non-D1 competition, but 8-2 is 8-2. They have a great win over Marshall. That's an excellent win right now because Marshall, that's their only loss. That is Marshall's only loss. And then they lost against LaSalle in a Jamaica campus game. That's okay. And then their other loss came at George Mason, who's an A10 team. All right, they close out the month Wednesday against East Tennessee State. They have a tough one on the 20th against Nebraska. And the 22nd, they are at Fairleigh Dickinson. The 29th, they open conference play against Queens. Against Austin Peay. And then New Year's Eve, they're at Eastern Kentucky. I don't think they're an at-large contender. Like, they would have to do the 2013-14 Wichita State thing to be an at-large in a way. But they have 2 losses, and maybe for them it's a race to the 12th seed if they if they win the ASUN tournament. And then the last shout is Florida Gulf Coast. We all know them as Dunk City from 2013. They only have 3 losses. They have 8 wins. They won at USC. That's an excellent win. That's probably a better win on paper than Marshall. Their loss is at San Diego, who's a 500 team in the WCC. At Tennessee is an acceptable loss. Contender in the SEC. And then their lone loss from this month came at FAU. The closeout the month Friday at St. Bonaventure. Wednesday the 21st hosting Canisius. And then they start conference play at home on New Year's Eve against Jacksonville. All right, now we're going to do shouts in the ACC. We're only going to do 3. Shouts to Miami, 10-1 on the season and 2-0 in conference play. They have conference wins over shitty Louisville and then NC State. And their lone loss came at Maryland, which not a bad loss now looking back. Maryland's not bad this year. Notable non-con wins they have: one over Rutgers, one over Providence. UCF isn't very good, so we're not going to say that. So the closeout 2022, they have they're hosting St. Fran, PA on Saturday. The 20th, they have a big game as they host number 3 Virginia. The 28th of December, they're home for Vermont. And 2:30 on December 30th, Miami and is at Notre Dame. Virginia, they're 8-0 on the season, 1-0 in conference play, obviously, number 3 in the country. They have their conference win over Florida State, who stinks this year, and then notable non-con wins. In Vegas, they won both their games against Baylor and Illinois. Those are excellent wins. They beat Michigan in Michigan, which is an excellent win. And then an okay non-con win is home for James Madison. Saturday, they have a big one against number 1 Houston. And who knows, maybe when we're talking on Saturday, they're number 1. The rankings will come out today, so we'll see. The 20th, they are at Miami, which you talked about. The 28th, they are hosting Albany. And then conference play resumes on New Year's Eve at Georgia Tech. And the last chat we're going to do is Virginia Tech. They're 10-1 on the year, 1-0 in conference play. They have that big win over North Carolina, the kickoff conference play. They beat a good Dayton team in the A-10. They're the preseason favorite Dayton team. They beat Oklahoma State. Their lone loss came in Charleston against Charleston by 2 points in the Charleston Classic. The Penn State win in Charleston's looking better and better by the day. They have a win over Minnesota, which doesn't look great on paper. 3 games left for them in the calendar year. They have on Saturday home for Grambling. On the 21st, they are at BC. And on the 31st, they are at Wake. All right, America East. One shout. UMass Lowell, who is unreal. They're 11-1 on the year. They beat UMass last week. Their lone loss came at Rutgers, which is a Big Ten team, could be a tournament team. So their best win is obviously the UMass win, who's only has 2 losses all year. And they had 3 games left this month at Rhode Island on Tuesday. The 21st, they host BU. And they start conference play on New Year's Eve at NJIT. All right, the AAC. Houston just suffered their first loss of the year against Alabama, but they're 9-1, and we still got to give them credit for some wins. They beat St. Mary's a few Saturdays ago. They beat Oregon earlier in the year. Could turn out to be a good win. And then they are coming off the loss to Alabama, obviously. And that was at home, too. Close out the month hosting NCAT at Virginia. We talked about that already. Hosting McNeese at Tulsa to start conference play. And then hosting UCF. And we'll talk about Memphis for a second, too. They're 8-2 on the season. They just beat Auburn. They have a win over Ole Miss. They have a win at Vandy, so they have 3 wins against the SEC. They have a win over VCU. Their 2 losses at St. Louis and in the ESPN Events Invitational against Seton Hall. And then they close out December at Alabama, which is hard. Home A&M, home Bama State, and home South Florida. The Big Ten. We're giving one shout, and that's to the Purdue Boilermakers, who's 10-0 on the year, 2-0 in the conference. They have some excellent wins on the season. Their 2 conference wins came over against Nebraska and Minnesota. They have a win over a perennial contender in Hofstra. They have a win over Marquette, a win over West Virginia in the Phil Knight, a win over Gonzaga in the Phil Knight, a win over Duke in the Phil Knight. They won that event. And then they beat Florida State, but Florida State's not Florida State anymore, or at least for this year. And then they close out the year hosting Davidson, hosting New Orleans, and hosting Florida A&M. So they should still be undefeated when we get into 2023. The Big 12. A couple shouts for the Big 12. Kansas State, 9-1. Their lone loss came against Butler at the end of November. They have a good win over LSU. They have a nice win over Nevada. Rhode Island's not Rhode Island anymore. Cal stinks. A win over an old contender in Wichita State. Then they close out the calendar year. They have a neutral against Nebraska on Saturday. Hosting Radford and then hosting West Virginia to kick off Big 12 play. All right, Big East. We have two. The St. John's Johnnies, who's 10-0 on the year, 1-0 in conference play with their conference win coming at home against DePaul. That's like a given. Their non-con is not strong. On paper, in a regular year, neutral against Syracuse may not be bad. A win over Nebraska doesn't look all that great. Temple, what are they going to be? But their schedule gets harder once we enter conference play. They have Florida State in the Orange Bowl Classic. That's a neutral. They're at Villanova. At the Pavilion, and then they host Xavier. Is that at the Garden? No, it's at the Lou. And then they're at Seton Hall on New Year's Eve. And then UConn, who's 11-0 on the year, they have some decent wins. At Florida, Oklahoma State, They won the Phil Knight Invitational. They beat Oregon, Alabama, and Iowa State. Those are their 3 wins that are the resume starters right now. They close out the year all conference play at Butler, home Georgetown, home Villanova, and at Xavier. We'll see if they get through that unbeaten. Big Sky. Nobody in this conference deserves a shout, honestly. The Big South. We're giving one shout. That's the high point. They're 8-2 on the season. They lost at home to a good Queens team that we talked about earlier. And then UNLV, who's undefeated. I think they're still... they are still undefeated. So their 2 losses are 2 acceptable losses. Notable wins, home Wofford, and Wofford's been a contender in the SoCon in the past. And then at Furman, who's usually a SoCon contender. To close out the calendar year, at UNC Wilmington, at East Carolina, at Longwood, home for Gardner-Webb. So they might get out of that 12-2. The Big West, is there anybody to shout? We'll shout UC Santa Barbara. They're 6-2. Their losses came at Northern Arizona and at Duquesne. Duquesne's a more reasonable one. Northern Arizona is not very good. Notable wins, home Fresno, but Fresno's not really anything. Home Pacific stinks, and then at Pepperdine. And Pepperdine isn't very good. They close out the month, home San Diego Christian, at Portland State, at App State, at Fullerton, home UC San Diego to start conference play. All right, Conference USA, there's a few to shout that have 1 losses that I want to talk about. Florida Atlantic has only 1 loss on the season. At Ole Miss, that's reasonable. They have a win at Florida, which is a good win. They have a win at home against or not at home, but well, it is a home game technically against Bryant. And then they have a home win against Florida Gulf Coast, which is pretty good. Rest of the month, they host St. Thomas, Florida. They host FIU to start conference play. They host Northern Kentucky, and then they're at North Texas, which is going to be a good game. And the other team I want to shout from this conference is Western Kentucky, who's 8-1 on the year. Their lone loss came in the Cayman Islands against Akron. Notable wins against Tulane and Cayman Islands. And that's really it. Their schedule is very weak. They have an excellent chance to beat Louisville on Wednesday night on ESPN2. Then they are at South Carolina. They can win that game too. They host Rice to start conference play, and then they're at Middle Tennessee. This is like an unknown for me in terms of this 4-game stretch for Western Kentucky. We'll see. The Colonial. We're going to shout one team, and that's Charleston. They have one loss all season. And that was at North Carolina. And North Carolina is still North Carolina, but they're not ranked anymore. They're not number 1 anymore. Notable wins. Chattanooga, contender in the SoCon usually. Richmond and Davidson, those are A-10 teams. They have a win over Virginia Tech, then that's their only loss. Colorado State, that's a Mountain West team. Kent State, who was a MAC favorite. And that's really it. They close out the year home Stetson, at Coastal Carolina, which is tricky. Home Hampton, and at Towson, which is going to be a money game on New Year's Eve to start conference play. The Horizon League, nobody really's earned that right to get shouted out. Ivy League, we'll talk about one team, that's the Princeton Tigers. They're 8-2. Their losses came home against Hofstra on opening night and then at Navy. So this team has won 8 straight games. And then they're at Iona on tomorrow, which won't be easy. They host Delaware, they host Keene, and then they're at Harvard to kick off Ivy League play. The Metro Atlantic MAC. We'll talk about Iona real quick. They're 2-0 in conference play, 6-2 on the year. Their losses came at Hofstra, reasonable, and then in Vegas against Santa Clara. Notable wins. Preseason Iona knocked off preseason Vermont. And then they beat 2 A-10 teams in St. Louis and St. Bonaventure. So that's not really a strong 6-2. They can make it a little stronger if they knock off Princeton and end their winning streak tomorrow night. And then they're at New Mexico, who's undefeated on Sunday. And then they close out the year in the Diamond Classic. They'll kick it off against SMU. The Mid-American MAC. 2 teams need to be recognized, Kent State and Toledo. Kent State, their losses at Gonzaga, at Charleston, and at Houston, all reasonable. All the other games, it makes sense that they won them. Only 2 games left this calendar year scheduled. Home for Concord, and then the Sun Bowl Invitational against New Mexico State, and there's probably 2 more games in there. And then Toledo, their losses, George Mason at George Mason. Gulf Coast Showcase against Kansas City and East Carolina. And then they close out against Marshall. That's going to be a hard one. At Vermont, and then hosting Lourdes. And then they really don't have any wow wins to speak of. All right, MEAC, nobody to really talk about. Missouri Valley, we'll talk about one team. That's Indiana State. They're 9-2 overall, 2-0 in conference play. They knocked off Southern Illinois in conference play, as well as Drake. And Drake's a perennial team in that league now. Their losses at Gulf Coast against Kansas City. And they lost against Southern Indiana yesterday. They close out the year at Duquesne, hosting Northern Illinois and hosting Evansville to kick off more conference play. The Mountain West, there's 3 we need to talk about. They're all undefeated. UNLV, New Mexico, and Utah State. The Mountain West, those 3 teams are serious at-large contenders now. UNLV is a big one on Saturday. They host San Francisco. Then they host Southern Miss. That's another big one. And then they're at San Jose State to start conference play. And then they host San Diego State, who's ranked. Notable wins. Vegas against Washington State. They beat then-ranked Dayton. And then they beat a Minnesota team that's not very good. New Mexico, the games against New Mexico State obviously canceled. They have notable wins against St. Mary's. SMU is not really that good. And then UTSA. They have a big one tonight against San Francisco. And then they host Iona, host Prairie View, host Colorado State, and then at Wyoming. And then Utah State. They have a win at San Francisco. That's a great win. That's funny that San Francisco is playing all 3 of them. They have a win against Loyola Marymount. Santa Clara. So they have some okay wins. And then they host Westminster, Utah, host Weber State, against Seattle in the Diamond Head, and then they start conference play on New Year's Eve against Fresno. But yeah, the Diamond Head's going to be interesting for them, for sure. I don't think there's anybody to talk about in the Northeast Conference. The OVC, nobody either. The Pac-12, we don't have any more undefeated teams, but there's one team I want to talk about in particular. They're 9-1 the year, 2-0 in conference play, and that's the Arizona State Sun Devils. Their lone loss came against Texas Southern last month in the Pac-12 SWAC Legacy Series. Notable wins. They won the Legends Class against VCU in Michigan. They beat Colorado, beat Stanford, and then they beat SMU. They have a tough one tonight against Creighton in Vegas. They host San Diego. They're at San Francisco. And then they host their in-state rival Arizona when conference play really starts. The Patriot League. Let's talk about American real quick. They're 7-2 on the season. Their lone losses at George Mason and at Marist, so they've won 7 straight. They knocked off Georgetown in the process. I guess the only win that's really good on paper. And then they beat George Washington, too. They close out the calendar year hosting VMI and Siena and then at Lafayette. Reasonable for them to go 10-2? Or to be 10-2 come New Year's? Maybe. We'll see. The SEC has a couple unbeatens. Or no, they only have one unbeaten left. And that is the Bulldogs of Mississippi State. Notable wins yesterday night at Minnesota. They won the Fort Myers tip-off. They beat Utah. They have a win over Marquette in that same event. And then to close out the month, they host Jackson State, they host Nichols, they host Drake, and then they host Alabama in the big one in the start conference play at the end of the year. So we'll see. I'm going to say at worst, probably 12-1, maybe 13-0. The SWAC. There's nobody really to talk about Southern, the SoCon. There's a couple 7-3 teams. Southland. Let's talk about Northwestern State. 8-2 on the year. And now I'm cutting this segment a little short because time. They have a win over Southern Miss, and Southern Miss was undefeated at one point. Stephen F. Austin used to be a contender. They lost against Texas Tech, and then they lost against Illinois State. They were the ones that beat TCU in a bye game about a month ago. So that's their notable win. And then the Southern Miss win. They are at Rice, at Baylor, at Texas A&M, and hosting A&M Corpus Christi to close out the year. The Summit League. There's a couple of 3-loss teams in there. Sun Belt, they have some good stories. There's 3 that I want to touch on real quick. Marshall's 9-1. They have a lot of great wins. Their lone loss came against Queens, and they've won 9 straight since then, including the win at Duquesne. Coming up for them at UNC Greensboro, hosting Toledo, hosting Glenville State, hosting App State, and hosting James Madison. So maybe they're 14-1 on New Year's Day. We'll see. Southern Miss 9-1 on the year. Their lone loss came against Northwestern State, as I mentioned. Notable wins at Liberty, at Vandy, Cancun against Winthrop. To close it out, the year they are at Lamar, hosting McNeese, at UNLV, that's a tough one. Home Troy and home App State. And then Louisiana's also 8-1 in this conference as well. Their lone loss came at Drake, and Drake's not a bad Mountain West team. Notable wins, home Louisiana Tech at SMU. Asheville Championship against Harvard. And coming up, they host Louisiana Christian, at McNeese, at Texas, at Coastal, and at Old Dominion. And then 2 more conferences. The WAC, we have to talk about one team. That's Seattle. They're 7-1. Their lone loss came at Washington, which was reasonable. And the rest of the wins really aren't that special. 4 more games left this month. Thursday at Oregon State. That's tough. They host Alcorn State. Diamond Head. I should say 4 more scheduled games. They play Utah State in the Diamond Head. That's going to be a good game, potentially. And then they host Cal Baptist. And then the team that shout from the West Coast Conference is the San Francisco Dons. They're 8-2 on the season. Their losses came at Davidson and home for Utah State. And Utah State's undefeated. And Davidson's off to a good start in the A-10. They have a busy December to close out. Tonight they host New Mexico. Then they're at UNLV. That's a tough one. Home Texas Arlington. Home Arizona State. That's another hard one. Home Hartford. At Santa Clara to start conference play. And then home for San Diego. So that's the new CBB Shouts segment that I'm going to do. Maybe we'll do more next week. All right, news and notes for today. That was a really long segment. Alrighty, so breaking news coming down right now is that Texas men's basketball coach Chris Beard arrested and was charged with assault on a family household member, a third-degree felony. Wow. This is stunning. And it's sad. The Longhorns came out with a statement. The university is aware of the situation regarding Chris Beard. We are continuing to gather information and monitoring the legal process. So, well, this is crazy and a situation that's going to keep going, and it's going to hurt the Longhorns. And we'll see if there's a punishment that comes down here. And then the New Mexico State players avoided police as the police say that New Mexico State men's basketball left the University of New Mexico campus, ignored interview requests following the November shooting. Yikes. And that story is going to keep going as well. Sad news in the NBA. Three-time NBA champion and former head coach Paul Silas passes away at the age of 79. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family, his former teammates, and the Rockets, and obviously his son Steven, who's the head coach there right now. That's very sad news that come down yesterday. More basketball news. Jalen Brunson has a sprained ankle and status for Wednesday's game against the Bulls, TBD. Now we're just going to go random because of time. Mets signed Kodai Senga, 5 years, $75 million. Not a bad signing for them. We'll see. Giants signed Sean Manaea, 2 years, $25 million. Nice signing for them. They must be like Adam Rondon. The Brian Reynolds price is Soto type, as the Pirates reportedly want a lot for their disgruntled outfielder, who executives describe unlikely to move. Dodgers in on Dansby Swanson, as well as the Cubs. The Blue Jays signed Kevin Kiermaier. Texas and Oklahoma may join the SEC early, as the decision can be reached next month to join in the 2024. Caleb Williams wins the Heisman, which is no surprise, although I think Max Duggan should have won it, who had 188 votes, and CJ Stroud had 37. I don't know why RG3 came out and supported CJ Stroud. No way. They lost to Michigan. No thanks. Stanford is hiring Troy Taylor as its next head coach. He's the coach from Sacramento State. I like that hire a lot. Very promising. UFC 282. Paddy Pimblett beats Gordon 4-0 in the octagon with the unanimous decision. The match, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth beat Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy. That comes to no surprise. A ton of injuries yesterday, most notably a Russell Wilson concussion and Kenny Pickett concussion. Tyler Huntley also had a concussion. Deebo Samuel was carted off with an ankle injury, and it may not be that serious. Tyler Boyd left the game against the Browns due to a finger injury. Deebo has an ankle sprain, apparently. Jeff Wilson, hip injury. There's a report out that Tom Brady can come back in 2023, leaving all options on the table. Sean McVay expects Baker Mayfield to close the season as its starting quarterback. The Jaguars waived Darrell Henderson. The Lions are keeping Jared Goff in 2023. Period, as they report. UNC wide receiver Josh Downs enters the draft. That's not surprising. He won't play in the bowl game. The Cowboys plan a $295 million stadium upgrade as it's set to undergo renovation project ahead of the 2026 World Cup. Sad news from the World Cup. Grant Wall, the U.S. reporter, passes away at the World Cup. That's just very sad news. We don't know the cause of death. Just very sad. Thoughts and prayers go out to his family in the soccer world. And then Berhalter airs out a U.S. player. Says that one player on the World Cup squad was asked to apologize for behavior. Reportedly, Gio Reyna. Neuer broke his leg while skiing, as he's expected to miss the rest of the season after surgery on Friday. The Saints were fined $550,000 by the NFL because Cam Jordan, the coaches and the team, allegedly faked an injury against the Bucs. And there's a report out that the mystery team for Carlos Correa could be the New York Yankees, which would be absolutely bonkers. All right, last but not least, my best bet of the day brought to you by FanDuel. The best bet from Friday was Knicks -3 against Charlotte. That was about as easy as a win that you can get. I'm going to college basketball for my best bet. I am laying a quarter unit with San Diego -6.5 at home against UC San Diego. I think that they're way better than UC San Diego, and it should be a double-digit line. So I'm laying 6.5 with San Diego against UC San Diego for my best bet of the day. All right, that's it for today's show. I'll be back tomorrow recapping everything. We're going to do NFL Power Rankings on tomorrow's show as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.